and it says,
You are now being
got it.
recorded, Robert.
Hi. Well, I had a thing come up I needed to click on too. So
So,
there, see, you got the big smile now.
too late.
Oh, okay.
Too late. It doesn't matter. So,
Okay. Yes.
everybody, all my
Yes.
audience know who you are now, but for those brand new people, I'd like to welcome Robert Lindsay Milne, all the way from Canada. And for
Yes.
those who don't know who you are, Robert, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
Well, I'm a good old-fashioned type psychic. I've done this job for a pretty long time, about 57 years, 57 and a half now. And I've traveled most of the world, appearing on radio and TV shows, doing psychic readings. And I've had some really interesting experiences as a psychic. And it's only been the last couple of years that I've been talking about them and remembering them. They're coming back. So that's what I have my own podcast now, and I do readings so it's really interesting how life is going. And today, well, Wednesday in Canada, I turned 73.
Oh, it's your birthday.
Yes, we're just coming up to the end of it.
Happy birthday.
Mm-hmm.
It's Michelle's birthday tomorrow.
Oh, is it? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Well, I'm not. I recall that we had our birthdays similar or close together.
And it's my husband's on Sunday. So all these
No
good
kidding. Wow. All
Yeah.
these Cancerians.
Yes, all these Cancerians in my life. So now tell me what happened yesterday, because firstly, fabulous. Happy new birth year to you.
Thank
And
you.
Robert,
Yes.
although you are, what, 73 now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, now I'm 73. Yeah,
73. Didn't you try something brand new yesterday?
well, we went on Facebook Live and did a live broadcast on Facebook. And it was a section called WWRS, which, and on my podcast is What Would Robert Say? And I just went on with, the camera turned on eventually, and it took a while. My fault, completely my fault. And we were about 20 minutes late going on. And I messed up all the controls, but I have an incredible team behind me or beside me or holding my hand. And we were talking on the phone because I couldn't get the show on the air. And then something unusual happened. I had to do the broadcast on my iPhone. And I've never done a video on my iPhone. I've always done videos on my computer. So that was really interesting. And we talked about being psychic, and people, typed in, and I talked about things that come into my mind and made predictions. So we're going to be doing that every couple of weeks now, as well as my podcast too.
So they can't say that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, because you certainly can.
Seems so. Well, maybe. Well, I was a little slow on the uptake with getting the show on the air, but
But you still did it.
We still did it, of course. That's right. So it was great. And I'm not an old dog, like, by the way, just not gonna just wanted to bring that up, right? Like, so, it's really weird being the same age as old people. It's just, so yesterday, so this is still Wednesday, so it's still the 13th for me, and that's my birthday. So what do I do? So yesterday I did a couple of readings, and I appeared on Facebook podcast. I did an interview this afternoon, did a couple of readings, and now I'm talking with you. Tomorrow, I'm doing another interview for my side of the crystal ball and doing another couple of readings. And wow, what a wonderful way to live my life. I'm just thrilled by that.
Yes, it's so fabulous. I haven't done readings for a long time, and they told me that the reason that they'd stopped me, sort of, or else I'd stopped myself, was because of the anxiety that had given me, because I always was nervous that I wouldn't deliver the right information. But I did 3 readings in the last week.
What was it like being back in the saddle, as it were?
You know what, Robert? It was effortless.
Was it what? So being effortless means that you just slid through it all. You just got into the groove and did it.
I took my fear away of having to be right. And I thought to myself,
all the time, right?
Yeah, I thought to myself, if these people actually believed in me enough, and if I've done it before, surely I can do it again. Why would it just stop? So I just said, hi, team. This is the person that I've got here, what it is that they need to know at this time. And then I removed myself out of the equation and just let them know, and just started writing exactly what came through. Wow. And the one lady, she had given herself a reading, and she asked me for a reading, and she said to me, oh my gosh, our readings are almost exactly identical. It's just you've used slightly different terminology. And that made me feel fabulous, because I realized, okay, I'm still on track. And then the other readings, I got a bit of information about stuff that I didn't know. And I had to look that up.
Did you take a break? Did you take a break from doing those readings, or what was it that caused you to stop? I know that you were nervous, but I get nervous still. I get nervous. Oh yeah. I get nervous that I'm not going to live up to my reputation. Yes. That's really scary, Yes. But I just sit down and I know this is what I do. And I know that if I'm not really tuning into the person or doing a good reading, I will know that I'm not. And then I'll tell the person, I'm sorry, I'm just not tuning into you right now.
Yep. And for whatever reason, they're not supposed to be receiving information at that time.
Or want to, or I'm not in the right space, or any one of a million reasons, except that I know when I'm just not clearly connecting. So, and I tell them and give them their money back.
So, Robert, what is the difference between a channel and a psychic or a clairvoyant?
I think the words. I'm really down to earth kind of guy when it comes to this work. It really is simple.
And it's semantics, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It really truly is. And it doesn't bloody matter what you call it. See, in this business, you don't get points for knowing how it's done. You get points for getting the right answer. So that's where you get all the points, right? That doesn't matter, the formula, because it's in math, like in advanced math, you have to know the reasons why you got to the answer. Not in the psychic business. You got to have the answer. Nobody cares how you got to it. The only people, I'm going to piss people off tonight. Okay, the only people that it's important to are the ones that are teaching it, so that they can give. See, when you're teaching something, you gotta give them labels, and you got to give them homework, and and you got to make it complicated and make them think, and that's not the way it's done. So when I was younger, there, like I started working at the tea room, I was 15 and a half. And around 18 or 19, I was doing psychic experiments at an organization called the Toronto Society for Psychical Research. and it was financed by a Canadian financier, and he hired Dr. George Owen and Mrs. Owen. Dr. Owen was a professor of mathematics at Oxford University, and they came to Canada, and they ran the institute, and they were doing experiments. And I was doing some of the experiments, and
For them,
yes, of course, yes.
as a subject. They studied you as a subject.
Well, I didn't quite see it like that, but yes, you're correct. Well, what they were doing is giving me psychic tests to do.
Yes.
Okay, so this one time, and this experiment could never have been done today. So there were a lot of important people involved at this institute. There were, a lot of high-level people, and one of the directors was a doctor. He was an obstetrician, and the experiment that night was he brought several blood spots on a piece of paper, like a blotter, and they were blood spots from his patients. And they were just numbered, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. And he had all the patient's information with him. And there were about 15 intellectuals in the room while we were doing the experiment. They were observing, and they'd give me a blood spot, and I would hold the blood spot in my hand, and I would just start talking about what I felt.
That person.
Yeah, that's right. And I just did it. And I was watching the doctor, fall all over, with what I'd been saying. He was like really flipped out, and some of the other people were. And then after I'd done it, the intellectuals started debating about what was Robert really doing. Was Robert being clairvoyant, or was he just being telepathic?
Well, and they were doing a blood spot.
Yeah. Okay. So now that had been going on, like that debate had been going on for a while. So I was a kind of pissy kid sometimes. And I walked over to the box of blood spots, and I went over to that guy and I said, "Here, let's find out if you can just be telepathic."
Yes.
And he got all stuff, and I wouldn't do any more experiments. And the point, though, I was just thinking about that the other day. The point was, as soon as you start trying to define it, you're restricted. Here's the reason why. A different part of your brain kicks in. Excuse me for just, everything's fine. Tyson, relax. Good boy. He was having a dream. He's okay. Oh, there he goes again. Excuse me. So all the times to do that. So anyway,
he's joining in.
He certainly is. So what my point was is, when you start to think about something, you use a different part of your brain. And the part of your brain that you use is the analytical part. And the analytical part of our brain is black and white. And where psychic stuff comes from, intuitive stuff comes from, creative stuff comes from, is a different part of the brain. And that's more of the creative, imaginative. It's also called the middle brain, and sometimes it's called the mammal brain as well. And that's where our intuition and our psychic ability, that's where it comes through, not the analytical part. So as soon as you start thinking about it, you're making stuff up.
So do you think anybody can do this?
Almost everybody. Almost. So
Even the analytical types, the accountants.
so let me just so give you an example on that. Okay, so if we take a bell-shaped curve, at one end of the bell-shaped curve, there is one person that has absolutely zero awareness. And then as you know, through the bell-shaped curve, at the other end of the spectrum, there's one person that's 100%. I'd like to be that one. And then the rest of us are maybe not. The rest of us fit in somewhere in between. So almost everybody, not everybody, but almost. It's a natural phenomenon. It's a natural instinct. It's what caused us as a race, as a species, to get out of the caves was by using our instincts and our intuition and our senses. It caused us from not being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger as well, by following our instincts. And we all have them, instincts. So being psychic, and just look at the word psychic, its root is from Greek, and it is from psyche, which means mind, soul, or self. If you have a mind, a soul, or a self, and you use it, you're psychic. That's how it is. Or wherever you are in that bell-shaped curve. Yes. So what is being psychic? Well, has there ever been a time where, maybe you're out to dinner and all of a sudden you look up and someone's just looking at you? They're not staring like gunning you down, as it were. They're just looking at you, and then you look up. Or has there ever been a time where you were just seeing somebody in a crowd and then they turn and look at you? That's the basic intuition. It's also survival. It's our survival instinct. Or has there been a time where you just think about somebody you haven't heard from or whatever, and then the next day or later on, all of a sudden, they just pop up, whether they call you or connect with you or you bump into them. That happens to almost everybody. Almost not. Now there are some people that it doesn't happen to. Sorry, sorry, they're restricted in their awareness. But we almost always, all of us, have that intuition or basic sense. I then tell people, become aware of what's obvious. Become aware of what's obvious, and then more becomes obvious. And when more becomes obvious, then more becomes obvious again.
So give me an example of what you mean by that.
All right. One of my hobbies was I like to paint the inside of houses. I wasn't that good at it. I thought I was, but I wasn't that good at it. But that was about the only thing in construction that I could do. And so in the house I lived in, the new house, I for 5 years, I painted it from top to bottom 5 times. And I'd paint neighbors' houses, places, and do stuff like that. And I was friends with the guy who was the building, the construction supervisor for our entire neighborhood. And his name was Hugh O'Malley, by the way. And Hugh dropped by, and he walked into my place, and I thought, because everybody said, boy, what a great paint job. This is really beautiful. What I realized when people were saying that to me is that they were saying, I like the color. So I learned that just when Hugh dropped by. So Hugh drops in and he looks around and he says, who did your paint job? And I said, well, I did. And he said, oh yeah, it's nice color, and I said, okay, why do you think it's a bad paint job? and he pointed out to me where the mistakes were.
Mm.
And then they were obvious. To Hugh O'Malley, they were obvious. He walked in, he saw them because they were obvious. Unconsciously, I would have seen them, but I didn't pay attention. So I became aware of the obvious. And then I never unsaw them again, like the mistakes.
Yes.
And everywhere I would go, I would see things like those mistakes because they were obvious. And as I became more aware of what was going on, I saw more that was obvious, but wasn't obvious to others. So that's how we can be psychic. A big part of my career, I was the first Canadian psychic to tour the country, appearing on radio and TV shows, doing call-in. I was like the pioneer, and I would.
And the Witches Act or something was still in.
Well, that was only like in it was called the Witchcraft Act. It was in Canada, and it was written in, I don't know, about 1895 or something like that. It wasn't repealed. Actually, it was just taken off the books. It's okay, it's not a crime anymore. So it was the Witchcraft Act, and it said that anyone who, and it was assumed what this work is fraudulent, anyone who fraudulently tells fortunes for a consideration, section 2, give medical advice using occult or a crafty science, to accuse someone of a crime using an occult or crafty science, and I can't remember the other one, and is punishable by summary conviction of not more than 1 year. So they'd write you a ticket to appear in court, summary conviction of not more than 1 year in jail, and at the end it was like, and not more than $5,000. Now that was repealed on July 1st, 2019.
Wow.
Yeah. So was the marijuana laws too. Were all of us, with same day. And there was no correlation, I don't think.
So
I'm
interesting.
joking. Jill. No. Cannabis and fortune telling got legalized the same day. But I was saying I don't think there's any correlation, or maybe there is. I was playing.
Maybe you've just got to be out of your mind.
Maybe.
to float and find. I don't know. I haven't tried it, but
well, I didn't inhale. I did, though. I tried. So I didn't inhale. But anyway, we're talking about being psychic. So when I was doing the call-in shows, over
the radio,
I would, and my technique was, when you get on the air, tell me your first name, where you're calling from, think of a question, don't ask it. Okay, so my name is Mary. I'm calling from downtown Toronto. I say, thank you very much for calling, Mary, and then I just start talking, and I say whatever comes into my mind. And 8 or 9 out of 10 calls, the first thing I talk about with the person is their question that they want to ask. I answer it, and then I do that spiel, and then I stop and say, okay, well, what was your question? And they say, well, you answered it, or they asked the question, and I did that. And when I was doing that, Jill, when I did things like that, and things that I would do, is, now this is back in the days when our telephones were attached to the wall, and I'd say, Mary would be calling from Northwest Calgary or something. I say, okay, Mary, you're sitting down. What, you're in the living room? Yes, thank you. All right, you're holding your phone with your left hand? Yes, okay. If you turn your head to the right, you're looking out the living room window. Is that correct? Yes, okay. Go above the curtain at that living room window and go to the right. Is that where there's a crack in the wall? We're just right at the ceiling. Yes, that's right. And I was doing stuff like that.
So do you think
And
you
the
would
last,
do that? Sorry to interrupt you, Robert. Do you think you would do that to let them know then that the information that was then coming through was real?
I was showing off. I was doing a show.
Showing
I
off.
was performing. I was doing well, but very few psychics have done. That's what I was doing. Well, what I was doing was performing and evolving my raw talents. That's
They
what I
call
was
that
doing.
remote viewing now.
I know. I know that. Oh, yes, of course. Just one of the
So you could actually work for the government doing spy work then.
well, I
They'll
did.
just give you
I
coordinates.
did.
You did.
I have, yes. Would you like
Okay.
to hear about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because like I had contact with a Russian KGB agent. Okay,
Wow.
yeah. I've been remembering these things as I've been doing these podcasts, right? And plus my own. And so this happened very, very early in my career. And it was in the 70s, 76, 77. And in those days, they didn't have networks or the internet.
Yeah.
If you were on a radio station, you were in the city, So I was auditioning to be a guest on a radio show in Ottawa, a very prominent one. And in order to do the audition, I had to fly to, I didn't have to fly. I could have driven or taken the bus or walked or hitchhiked or something, but I chose fly. And I went to Ottawa to audition. And I got the show, and I appeared on that show every month for almost 12 years. But anyway, back to this. So, and I was about 25, 26, maybe 27. So I get back to Toronto, and I get a phone call from the program director, news director, and he said, ha ha ha, this guy, heard your show. Now, remember, it's the old days where people, even like we had telephone books and we dialed our phone. So this was a long time ago. So he said to me, a guy from Tass News Agency called up, and he wanted to talk to you and interview you. And then he said, haha, he's probably a spy. And I said, I don't want to meet him. I don't want, like I just sense it. And I said, so I don't want anything to do with this. Don't tell him my number. Don't let him know where I live, just nothing. And he said, okay, sure, Robert. And that was it. Over the next week, I was getting phone calls from friends saying, Robert, we've been getting phone calls from Sergeant so-and-so from the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, asking about you, inquiring. And several people, like, is he honest, and that kind of stuff, right? They were just, and then after about a week of that, I got a direct phone call, and the guy introduced himself as Sergeant, etc. And he was with the security service, and he would like to come and talk to me about a non-criminal matter. And I said, is it about the Russian guy in Ottawa? And he said, yes. And I said, I don't want anything to do with it. Please leave me alone. And he said, would you please just speak to us? It's something it's an urgent matter, and you could help your country. You could help the safety of North America if you meet this guy. And I said, well, I'll talk with you. And he said, my partner in Ottawa, who's in charge of the Russian desk, it was called, will fly in and we'll come to your place and we'll have our talk. And a couple of days later they did. These guys were giants, right? See, I'm not a really very big guy. I come across big on the screen, but I'm only like about 5'7" if I'm wearing like high heels or something. And I'm really not that big. These guys were like, well, they felt like they were 7 feet tall, but they were like 6'1", 6'2". They were just giants. And they're sitting in my office, and they were telling me about what was going on with this guy. And I can tell you this, some of the things, because it was more than 30 years ago that this happened. So the guy that contacted me, his name was Mironov, Ivan Mironov. And he indeed was a journalist with TASS News Agency, but he also happened to have a diplomatic pass. Gesundheit. He also happened to have a diplomatic passport.
Excuse me?
Gesundheit. He happened to have had a does this make you sneeze? Let's say it again. See, he happened to have had.
No, I have some water.
He happened to have had a diplomatic passport. Now, news journalists don't have diplomatic passports. Furthermore, this guy, Ivan Mironov. See, I did it again. It happened again.
It's the Russians, I tell you.
They're right, and they're coming. Look out.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Funny. So most of his career, he had been stationed in Washington, D.C. And out of the blue, he got transferred from Washington to Ottawa. That is not a promotion. It was during the end of the Brezhnev era. And this particular guy was protected by the Brezhnev people. It was thought that he was demoted because Brezhnev was losing power. He was old and senile, and that group was losing their power. And his protectors had lost their power, and he thought his next move, he was going to get called back to Russia and then go to Siberia. And they thought that's what he was afraid of. And they told me that story. And then we, they did, played a couple of psychic games or tried to. And I came up with a couple of things that, caused their face to turn white, because I came up with the name of a guy that was working with Mironov, and nobody knew it. And they just said, okay, you are either a spy or you really are psychic. And so then they said, we would like you to meet with him. And what we think is happening is that he's reaching out to us, and that we think he might want to defect. And if he does, it would be a very important, defection, because he has a lot of knowledge. He would be a very high up one. And I said, oh, okay, I'll do it. And I said, how do you want me to do it? And he said, well, I'll get back in touch with the radio station, book a show, get in touch with the program or the news director, tell him to have Mironov call you, and book an appointment for when you're in Ottawa. And by the way, he said, here, this is the hotel that you'll be staying at. And on the day of the show, the day before the show, they came and picked me up at home, and he took me to the airport, and I flew with them in a government plane to Ottawa. These two guys were with me the whole time. As soon as they met me at home, they were just beside me like glue. And when we got to Ottawa, there was a car waiting for us, and they took me and them to the hotel. And we got in the room, and there were actually the room I had to do the reading. I was supposed to stay in there. And then there were two rooms attached, like adjoining. and they were, all set up with the latest technology in those days, right? And there were like a couple of, gorillas in each room, like giants there. They were there too. And they had given me this guy's dossier, or they read his dossier to me, and they told me all about his life. And they wanted me, when I was doing the reading, they wanted me somewhere along the line to say something like, sometimes good friends stop being good friends, and sometimes new friends come along. You have new friends, or something like that, right? That's what I was supposed to say to the guy. So, and they gave me all his background, and so that I could fake it doing a reading. I started, and the crap that they gave me was wrong. His personal information. And I realized that after about 5 minutes that most of it was crap. It was inaccurate. And by the way, those guys were each the two rooms, and they were listening in, and I just changed the subject and just started doing my regular reading. And I did that. And I was recording it. And then I got to the point where I said, sometimes, old friends aren't good friends anymore, whatever. And then you have new friends, and you have new friends. And he stood up, turned around, and just walked out. He didn't say a word. He just stood up and walked out of the room, slammed the door, and was gone. And I thought that I screwed up. And anyway, when the guys came in, they said, "Oh, great job." And I said, "No, I screwed up." And he said, "Anytime anybody suggests defecting to the Russians, that's what they do. They just get up and walk away. As soon as it's even hinted, they just leave. That's the way they handle it. So you didn't do anything wrong." So that was how it was left. A little while later, the first guy that contacted me, his name was first name was Dell, and he was in charge of the Niagara Falls Bureau of the Security Service for the RCMP, for the country. And in the 1970s, or during the Cold War, more espionage, more intelligence was passed at the Niagara Falls Canadian-American border than anywhere in the world. And Dell asked me, was there a way, or could I find things? And I said, "Oh, sure." And he said, "Well, we're looking for dead letterboxes." A dead letterbox is where they would pass information, whether it be a direct pass or whether they bury it or hide it somewhere. That's a dead letterbox. And we look for them all through the park. So I said, "Sure, I can do that." And well, I didn't know if I could, but sure, I'll do that. And one day I went down to Niagara Falls and went in the bureau and looked at maps of the park. And again, I just put my hand over the map, and and my hands would get hot when I would sense where a dead letterbox would be, and they'd mark it on the map, and then we'd go out in the park looking. And I was like finding them. And I went down to Niagara Falls every month for about 2 years, doing that. And about in the first year, one time when we were walking through the park, looking for what I had found on the map, Dell just said to me, "Remember that Russian friend? It worked out." That was all I ever knew. That's all I ever found out about.
But how did they actually get the Russian guy to come to the hotel room?
He wanted to get a reading from me. And that's how he was reaching out. They wanted him, he wanted to meet me, and I was the one that was giving him the information that he was safe. That's how it happened. So I actually made the appointment for him. He called me and I made the appointment for him at the hotel. Yeah.
So why did you then end your work with the military?
With the, well, it was the RCMP, well, I did a little bit more as well. Well, I got bored also. And I was doing other things that were getting more exciting. Meeting Yvonne was pretty fucking exciting. It really was. Walking around finding, a letter stuck under a park bench after a while isn't all that much fun.
And did they
partying? No, but we had a wonderful partying, and they'd dragged me out of a hotel room the next morning and put me on a bus and send me home. We had wonderful parties the night after doing that, so that was great. And it was a pretty cool thing to do. So, they paid my bus fare and all my expenses, and it was a pretty cool thing to do. So that, it was a lot of fun. Now, during that time, I was involved with a lovely woman, and she was an Air Canada flight attendant. I actually met her on the flight that I was flying to Ottawa, and I met her on the flight that night. She was my flight attendant. And anyway, Eleanor was doing what was called Havana turnarounds. So a turnaround for a flight attendant is they fly to a city with a load of people, and then they get off, and then another group go and fly back. So we were tourist Canadians were going to vacation in Cuba, and Air Canada would fly to Cuba, and then the same flight would come back. She was doing those turnarounds. And one morning when I picked her up at the airport, she had this envelope and it was sticking out of her purse, and we're driving home, and I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Oh," and I can't remember the name. She said it was one of the women that were working at the airport that was a gate attendant, and she was working for Air Canada, but she was a Cuban. And Eleanor said, "Yeah, she's a really great person, and she's got his friend in Germany, and they share magazines back and forth, and she just asked me if I would mail this when I got to Canada." And I said, "Really?" Remember Cuba was a communist country, right? The world just about blew up because of the argument between, the United States and Russia and Cuba, and it just about happened, So I called Dell, and then the guy in Toronto and in charge of the Cuban desk came up and talked with us. Turned out that they were passing this the stewardess, the flight attendants were being used to pass intelligence across the borders, and then it was going overseas. And because of the connection that I had with the guy with the RCMP, him, Dell, and what I had done, it broke that ring too. Well, it didn't. See, in those days, Canada didn't have our spies, we didn't spy in other countries. And what we were doing in those days is when there were spies in Canada, the security service wanted to know why they were there and what they were doing. They didn't interfere. And they just observed and gave information to the other places. And anyway, I never found out again how it ended, but that was another time as well.
And you don't know what happened to that guy that came and had that reading with you that was in Washington and then arrived in Ottawa, the Russian chap?
never heard him again.
So does that mean that he was like a double spy for both countries?
I really don't know what would have happened after that. I would assume, and I can only assume, when Dell said everything worked out. Okay, I'm assuming that that's what he meant, that he got here. He would not have stayed in Canada. He would have been taken to the U.S. and at the time they were working with at Niagara Falls, the three forces, the RCMP, the FBI, and the CIA were, in communication with each other.
And now with remote viewing, I know that a lot of remote viewers now work for the military. They don't even have to have those spies anymore, because they just look and see, just like the blood spot. So what is the difference between reading the blood spot and psychometry? Same thing again, semantics?
Nothing, yeah.
Because years ago, I was taken by this lady who said, come, I want you to write in the beginning of my...
Well, okay, so actually, the only difference is, would be if you were holding something, you would have a stronger attachment to it. If you're sensitive, you have a sensitive touch. Okay. Other than that, it would be the same process.
Okay, same thing.
Same thing. So it would come from the same part.
Some people say that you shouldn't be channeling, that you don't know where this information is coming from, and it means that you've been taken over.
The noise in the background is, I'm not sure if you're hearing that noise in the background, is quite appropriate to what we're discussing. It's the garbage truck coming by.
I can't hear it.
Well, I can, and it's the garbage truck picking up the garbage and throwing it away. Yeah. That's appropriate. I forget what it was that the garbage being taken away is appropriate. What was it you were talking about?
The channeling, saying that you shouldn't be channeling information.
Okay, so
you're opening yourself up to something that you don't know, or in other words, manipulation or baddies, or
Okay. Who would be saying that?
Well,
would that be somebody
psychic?
Oh, okay.
So there is a lady that says she doesn't do channeling. She just chats to herself.
Okay.
I said, well, where do you think that information then is coming from? For me, it's just a telepathic transfer, which in other words is a channel. It's coming from somewhere to somewhere.
Well, okay.
So once again, it's semantics, isn't it?
Yeah. My issue with that whole process is, who the hell is someone else to tell another person how to do what they do naturally? Like who the fuck are you, to make a judgment? Just why don't you just focus on making yourself the best psychic you can be, and let everybody else do their own thing? How about that one?
Yeah. Because then it makes other people nervous, as to say, oh, well, where is Robert getting his information from?
Who does care?
But as my guides told me, whether you, and I've used this before, whether you eat a banana with a knife and fork or your fingers, as long as you'll still get the same nutrients. Doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter. So whether you call yourself a channel or a psychic or a clairvoyant, whether you do the tarot or the pendulum or the automatic writing or whatever, does it really matter?
It doesn't, only if you want to act important.
Yeah. I don't like labels. I just say, I'm a Joe, that's the way it is. Okay.
There was a time, there was a psychic fair in Edmonton. After a certain point, I didn't go to psychic fairs. I used to be the headliner at the first ones in Canada, and then I just stopped going to them there was a psychic fair in Edmonton. I was there, but I had a contract with a radio station. And that night, 5 or 6 of the psychics that were at the fair. They came to my suite at the hotel, and we were sitting around. And I don't know how the conversation got started, but the topic came up: when's the best time to get a reading from us? And one guy says, oh, well, the best time to get a reading from me is when I've been meditating. Another person says the best time when I've been fasting and meditating and being away at a retreat. And it's going around the table with all this spiritual bullshit. And then it was my turn. And I said, the best time to get a reading from me is when I need the money. And everybody at the table laughed, because that was the truth.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just greedy, make the money. The best time to get a reading from me is when I need the money. So I got to work real hard to get the money.
Mm.
So that's the best time. So they get the best reading and I get the money. And everybody knew that was the right answer.
So, Robert, what advice do you give to people who really need answers in their lives?
Well, that's a really big, broad question. Yeah. Depending upon what answers. So
they feel stuck. There are a lot of people at the moment are anxious, and they feel so stuck, and then they'll go to some people who would call themselves clairvoyant or whatever, but then do it just for the money, and it doesn't help them. Do you know what I mean? So then they're still stuck. So you have done so many readings, you've helped so many people, and I know you've done your life coaching as well.
Yes.
Can you perhaps today give people a few tangible things that they could measure in their lives at the moment to help them meet the situations that they're struggling with? Yeah.
I can give you a more genetic answer rather than, a conceptual answer rather than a specific one. When I do a reading for somebody, I often see their life from conception to completion. I see the thing in the whole life. And when I'm doing a reading for someone, I'm generally moving forward and backward in their life, comparing what was going on at an age and then at another age, and same thing. So when I'm going to give somebody bad news, and sometimes you got to do that. Well, what I do is I look at the positive. No, I want to talk about this one. I'll talk about this in a minute. When I find somebody who's going through a really difficult time, what I'll do is I'll look forward into the future to say someone has a crisis at 35. I'll look at their life at 75 or 80, and I will describe to them through their eyes at 80 how they feel about the way they solved the problem that they're going through right now. And that's one of the things that I do. When I give somebody bad news, it's my moral obligation that if I see something that's bad or horrible that's going to happen to that person, it's my moral obligation to tell them. I don't like doing that. I don't like doing that. I don't like doing that for a lot of reasons. One, because it scares the hell out of people. And the other one is, oh my God, what would happen if I was wrong? It's like, but I want to be wrong if I told somebody something terrible was going to happen. But look at the grief that I'd be putting to that person. See the craziness that that we can go through giving that information. So here's what I do. I look in the future and I describe to them the results of this terrible thing that's going to be happening to them, the end result. Because what we do one way, we do equally the opposite. When one door closes, another one opens. And that's true. So what I do is I talk to them about the real positive effects. I don't tell them it's because a shitty thing's going to happen. I just tell them what the positive effects. Then I come back to today and I just drop a little wee hint, just a little one, change the subject and talk about something else. Talk about the great thing. Then I come back and add it, give a bigger hint, and expand it and expand it. And by the time I'm ready to put it all on the table, they're already seeing it. But they're seeing it with the awareness that they live through it.
So are they suffering at the moment, so many, because they're not taking the steps that they should be?
Often that's
to
the case.
Remove
Absolutely.
what
Often
is
that's
causing
the
the
case.
pain, the current
Absolutely.
pain.
Absolutely.
And they just rooted in fear.
And they're stuck in fear. That's correct. On one of my podcasts, which my side of the crystal ball, I talk on. Actually, it turned out to be one whole episode. It was only like 31 minutes, where I talked about. It was like the whole show was a WWRS, right? What would Robert say? And I talked about the incredible positive results of the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life. And I talk about how horrible it was and how it just about broke me. And as a result of that horrible incident and the action I took, brought to me more than 20 years of really deep and beautiful experiences.
But at the time, you didn't know that it feels like interminable and awful. And if you look back, you think, wow, if I hadn't gone through that, that and that and that wouldn't have happened. But I'm saying so many people treading water, not allowing that next phase to happen.
That's right. Part of the reason for that is more to be explained medically or scientifically. And what really is going on when people get into that state, another part of their brain takes over, and it's like their primal brain, and all they're thinking about is survival, and all they're thinking about is what's going on in the moment, and what's going on in the moment is horrible. And when we get in that state of mind, when it's horrible, we can't see beyond it. And so when we're stuck like that, we can't see beyond the moment. And as a result, we're stiff and we don't grow or change.
So maybe that's the time when they do need to do a meditation or even a guided meditation. So that they can change.
Absolutely right. That or lorazepam.
Oh, she wasn't expecting that. So Robert,
yes,
I had written a whole lot of questions here to discuss with you, but we always go off on a tangent, you and I. So I'm just having a look, and we've been going for quite a while, but I might just throw in two.
Okay.
Do you think, Robert, there's life after death? And how did you reach your conclusion for your answer?
Is there life after death? This, Robert Lindsy Milne, okay? When this body dies, that's it. There is no more Robert Lindsy Milne, and never will be. However, that's the physical part that ends. What leaves is my essence of what I have been, but I'm not my spirit or my soul, just this essence of this existence. And this essence returns to wherever that soul returns to, and becomes a part of a grand energy. So is there life after death? Yes, there is. Is it Robert Lindsay Milne's life after death? No. Or anybody, once this body dies, that life is completed. So that's why when I'm say I see someone's life from conception to completion, I see it as completing a course.
And how do you come to the conclusion that you are essence and the essence goes somewhere else? The body dies,
I
but
made
the
it
essence
up.
goes. You just feel that?
I just made it up. No, I know. You see, the honest truth, Jill, is nobody knows. We all have what we think and what we want to happen, but nobody has ever really come back.
What about the
said,
near-death experiences?
well, they didn't die then.
Where
See,
they've
near is
actually
one thing.
they've been dead on the
Yeah.
operating table according
Not
to
long
humanity.
enough, not long enough for their body to shut down. Okay, like if they would have, same guy on the table, you know, that's have the near-death experience after 8 minutes or 9 minutes, try doing the same thing when a day later. Ain't gonna happen. It's done. Okay, now that's not a bad thing. That's what happens. Now, no one has come back to say absolutely this is what happened.
So what about
It's
those people like the Dr. Raymond Moody that does the
yeah,
reincarnation, and
okay.
he has people who are living right now
Mm-hmm.
who are saying that the children who are in the
Yeah,
wrong family and they demand to go back to their family, they give the
okay.
address of the family, they
Yeah,
go through the hallway, see the photographs and say, that's
okay.
my wife, that's my sister,
So
whatever.
okay, so for me to express an opinion about that um would be like somebody in grade 1 debating with someone with a doctorate degree. I don't
Okay.
know anything about what this person does. What I see is when the physical dies, the essence continues on. That's what I see. That's what I think it is. And one day we'll all find out.
And the
Here's
work that
something to imagine.
all the work that I do with my clients,
Mhm.
I, as the observer,
Yeah.
have observed that they have lots of lifetimes, lots of
Mhm.
adventures, but they're not Jills and they're not Roberts, as you say. The
Yes.
essence then goes to
So
where it
there,
needs to be and comes back in a different form and different format.
right. But it's not a different format of Robert. And
No,
it's not a different, no, it's a different essence. Okay,
yes,
that's all. So when Robert dies, it's the end of the parade.
yes, that's
Now,
like your part in the play. The next time you come back as the queen, last time you
absolutely.
were a tailor,
Could it
then
be
you
the
come
king
back as
instead,
this,
or like
you
as
know.
opposed to the queen?
Let's see one last one. Um,
See, I believe that the purpose of life is to experience. That's it.
yeah.
Um, and the rule is you have free choice and free will to experience anything you want. And the rule is what you experience one way, you must experience the opposite. That's you know, I'm not that spiritual.
Well, my guide said to me, they called it the boomerang. And they said
Okay.
humans always seem so surprised when they do something and then the opposite and equal reaction comes back and bites them on the bottom.
Oh yes, that's often the case.
Okay, very last question.
Okay.
How do people give their power away? And what happens when they do?
when we give our power away, something in us breaks, but no one can take our power away. We can give it, but no one can take our power. We can always take our power. In fact, our power never leaves us. It's just pretended that it's gone. Because the person who's getting the power isn't getting the power. They're just getting somebody who isn't putting up a fight or a defense. The person that's not putting up the defense has the power still inside them, and all they have to do, all they have to do, and inevitably somebody will come to what I call in life the Popeye the Sailor Man moment. Have I ever told you about Popeye the Sailor Man moment?
Yes, but tell them again so they
okay. So
remember
Popeye the Sailor Man was that cartoon, and in almost every episode, what happened is, Popeye and Bluto would get into a big fight or something, and Bluto would beat up Popeye, and then Bluto would kidnap Olive Oil, Sweet Pea, or Poop Deck Pappy. One or three of them were all together, and then he goes away. And Popeye is often at the bottom of the ocean with chains all around him, all beat up, and there he's sitting there, and he says, "That's all I can stands, because I can't stands no more." And he reaches into his tunic and he pulls out a can of spinach, eats the spinach, breaks the chains, jumps to the surface, runs up to Bluto, beats the hell out of Bluto again, and then he saves Olive Oil, Sweet Pea, and Poop Deck Pappy, or any of the order. That's the Popeye the Sailor Man moment. And we all can get to it.
Yeah. Robert, it's
Yes.
been so much fun talking to you again.
Thank you.
And every time I do, I learn something new. So this
Thank you.
time we learned all about the Russian era and everything that was happening at that time.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting. How do people get hold of you, Robert?
You can get in touch with me in several ways. My website, robertlindsymilne.com, www.robertlindsymilne.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. My website, I can't believe this. iHeart, TikTok. We're doing that now too. I'm 73 and we're doing TikTok. I did that yesterday. Anyway, and you can find me on my own podcast. It's called My Side of the Crystal Ball, and you can find it on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
I'm so impressed. The first time we chatted, you weren't on all those platforms.
Yeah.
And you have just absolutely taken off and blossomed.
Isn't it wonderful?
It's fabulous.
Yeah, it's just great.
So there is no time that people could put on themselves to say, "Oh, well, that's it, and I can't do this and I can't do that," because
I see it as I want
at any time.
Absolutely. And besides doing all of that, guess what? I have applied for a job for the autumn coming up. Like that'll be in September and through the winter. Do you know what it is?
No, yes, come on, tell us.
I'm going to be a school crossing guard, and I'm going to help all little kids and mothers across the road so they don't get run over when they're going to school. That's what I'm going to do.
Good for you.
Yeah, I know. People look at me and say, "Are you joking?" No.
Well,
that's what I want to do. I don't have the privilege of being close to children. And at my age, being single and living alone with 3 dogs, although I'm a highly public person, there's always suspicion. Always suspicion.
Really?
And one of, I didn't realize this until last April. I was walking up the street and I saw some kids, little children, holding hands, making a big circle around a tree. And then there were teachers there, and the kids were running around the circles, and they were laughing and screaming, and I just stopped and watched, and my ears filled with the sound of children's laughter and joy. And then there were tears coming down my face, because I had realized, because of the pandemic, how much I missed it. And I realized that I just want to be around children in a safe way for all of us, and that's one way to do it.
Beautiful. And just imagine that young energy and how you can just be there, like,
oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah,
Robert the Lollipop Man.
that's right. You know,
Yeah.
I'm really cool. Well, actually, I'm the man with the 3 golden retrievers.
Fantastic.
That's right.
Fantastic.
I go out for
Well,
walks on the streets with my dogs all the time.
I wish you nothing
Thank
but
you.
the best and lots of joy with your new job.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed, you know, that
Yeah.
they're going to give you that job, and that
Yeah.
no young whippersnapper has taken that away from you and
Not
saying
me.
you retire and leave the jobs to us.
Right. Yeah. Well,
So-
no,
So
that's
that's
not going to
great.
happen. Yeah.
Out in the fresh air.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Robert,
It's only
wishing-
an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half in the afternoon. It's not like,
perfect.
you know,
Lots of tea breaks
Yeah.
in between.
that's right. Well, then I'll do readings.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, the other job,
right.
the side job.
That's right.
I'm just wishing you the most beautiful new birthday year.
Thank you.
I hope that it delivers everything that you are looking forward to still, and
Thank
that you kick ass at your new job and you keep us
Thank you.
informed.
Oh, I will. I will.
Okay,
Thank you.
lots and lots of love.
See ya.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Cheers.